So in this video now I'm going to show you basically the process I have to run through to be able to rebuild this one actually with the tools or the process fusion, or technically speaking, a solid modeler provides you and forces you also to work with. So in Alias I was able to quickly just place my rings and then create the skin. In a solid modeler it doesn't really work that easy. So what I'm going to do first is actually clean up everything a little bit. So for example, this is my import, and then I'm going to create a sketch on this plane. You also see I'm in the side view, and with the sketch I'm using the spline, and I try to see how maybe I could somewhat recreate the shape. Click this plus button and then see if maybe a little bit of adjusting those handles can help in sculpting that transition. Maybe drag this point so there I'm not touching the handle. So it's actually not a bad tool. There. Okay. Then I will try to do the same also for the inside. So I create another spline. I don't know, maybe for the moment, let's start here. Click. I'm not sure about how many points I might need there, so I might have to do some trickery. So in this case here now I'm going to actually rotate this handle, push this one out. Here maybe at this point, let's see if I can push it to there, and okay, now that surface really hits my nerves. It's always being selected. So you can go to selection filter, select all, so select nothing, sketch points and curves, everything in sketches I only want to select for the moment. So that's going to make my life a lot easier. And I'm moving this point up. And down here, if I click on this line, I have to change my handles a little bit and just push those out. One thing maybe I would like to point out, you see when I move this one horizontally or vertically, you see icons pop up, and there's actually no constraint. So those handles can only be vertical now. To change this, I have to click this constraint and then simply press delete, and it's gone. There. So very easy. And maybe belly this one out a little bit here. Now I can adjust this. There, I'm getting somewhat close to the shape she has. Maybe here, push this one more to there. And currently you see here I'm not touching the handles. I simply let the curve flow through it, and then by dragging actually those points, the handles will be adjusted. Okay, so maybe like this. And let's zoom in here. See also when I go to a point and then I drag vertically down or to the side, you see there dotted lines. That's actually the snapping. So now those are actually horizontal to each other. And maybe this way there. Let's push this one to there. Now I think here I have to pull these handles out, otherwise there. Okay, and I might, let's for the sake of cleanness at the moment keep those at the same level. So you see I used the horizontal snap. And actually maybe this is not horizontal there, but it needs to be pushed out a little bit there. Okay, good. So that was basically step one, kind of like creating maybe a parameter for the outside rails. So this sketch, for example, I call maybe center rails. Okay, so next step, I'm going to create another sketch, because before I can place my rings perfectly along those rails, I need to create construction planes. That's one of the way how engineering tools here like Fusion works. Has its advantage for certain areas, also disadvantage, it's just labor intensive. So I create a new sketch, then I go to include geometry and actually make not the surface but just those lines included into the sketch. So if I stop sketching for the moment, didn't I rename those? I'm 100% sure I did. So let's maybe rename this one again. So rail center there, and those are now basically the rings axes. Okay, perfect. Good. So you see now in this sketch, you see the red lines and the endpoints. The main reason why I inside this sketch selected the include geometry, it basically made those curves from the rail center sketch snappable to inside the sketch. And this sounds a little bit odd, but no, this is actually one of the cool features of this process. If I change rail center, then the geometry here is being changed. So I can't really model this one. This is interactively generated. So let me do this for a second so you start understanding actually what the whole point is. So you see now, first I can actually snap to those lines now. If I turn this one on, I cannot actually snap to see those points. You can see them, but you can't really snap. Let's make another line maybe here, and I don't know, maybe one line there, one line here, one line there, and one last line, snap endpoint to endpoint. And now you see everything is filled, and that is not what I want. So I'm shift left click all those lines, right mouse button, and say those are construction lines. Perfect. Now let me go back for a second. You also notice that these lines actually have constraints. So what this means, these lines actually are aligned. Think about Alias, aligned from this curve to this curve. This constraint we delete. I don't want that. And now if I drag this line, you see the line actually flows with that curve. How awesome is that? So I do not have to make, I don't have to press any like curve snapping command. I simply can drag now that line here. So if I, for example, go to rail center and let's say change this, let's go back, you see this profile, which I 3D included, of course got updated because it's driven by the rail center, and then these lines who have a snap curve to curve also update. So that, for example, as an example, I said twice example. I say this actually way too often, but I hope this showcase basically the how you link geometry properties. Okay, so next step. This rail center for the moment we don't need anymore. And actually I would like to go in and select those two and also set those to construction. Okay. And now with those lines, we can actually create planes through it. So I go plane at angle. Plane along path is not really what I want. So I click this one and make sure that I do not see the plane, kind of like this. And you see currently I just see a line which tells me this plane is perpendicular to me. So I click OK, right mouse button, drag up, click this one, this one, this one. You can actually only create one plane per command. And just ignore that warning sign down here. That's all fine because all our constructions are here. And this is all total rubbish. I should have made them visible, so I have to change the degree. Bing. Okay, not a big deal. Here, right click and 90. So there you see how I'm rotating those construction planes. So those construction planes later will actually help us to place our arcs onto. Now I need also, or not I need to, I can actually also include, for example, those midlines as a start and end for my rings. So I have a 2-point curve. So I don't even have to pay attention to kind of like the rail command. So you will see that the way how we do all the snapping is going to work similar to Alias, but also a little bit different to Alias. Okay, so this is all good. To be honest, where did we start? There, plane 1. So maybe this one I call 1. 2. Oh, what? Oh, it skipped the naming. Oh, this is annoying. Okay, let's go back. Let's call this one C plane, select the text, copy 1. So simply all those names start making sense. And this is highly annoying. Sometimes the naming is being ignored. There. 3, click. And I guess it gets confused when you have multiple objects selected. Which makes sense. You can actually logically only rename one object at a time. There. What's this one? Oh. And there. Okay. I could. Can I? Plane 3. Please keep the name I give you. Yeah, I can't actually right now maybe bring them into an order. Okay, so and Alias decided here to mess this whole thing up. In Germany, or in German we would say, oh, I'm getting deers, or I'm growing deers. But so I'm not going to do this again because obviously something is kind of like not okay here with Fusion that it decides that it always needs to erase the namings. Okay, anyway, so there we have it. But I hope that basically right now we have 7 planes. If you have 10, 20, at one point you don't really understand what all these planes are. So you have to start naming your parts. And let's cross fingers that in the future this naming part will be more usable in Fusion. So now basically what I can start, because everything got named, but also I can see it visually, I should start now creating all my my rings. So for example, I can create now another sketch. And I'm going to click on the first plane. There. Before I do anything, include geometry. And I include this line. Then actually I can turn all this off. You see now you only see this line. And the main reason for that was simply I can go ahead, 2-point curve circle, yep. And then you see it snaps to the end and to the end point. And stop sketch. And immediately call this one maybe ring copy ring 1. Okay. Next sketch onto this one. And let's show this one, include this line, let's hide it, and click and click, done. And then let's name this one. Next sketch. Onto this one, please include this line and zip. And the next one, you see, so it's actually a pretty straightforward process. So you have to plan ahead a little bit how we are going to build everything. And I have to create kind of like an alias, all those rips before we can go ahead and then actually start creating the surfaces, which we're actually pretty close to. So next one there. And stop. Let's rename this one 5. Click new sketch onto this plane, include this line there. You also notice actually, if you pay attention to the next ring I'm going to create, that there are actually also snap points where a ring starts. So include geometry, this line. So now click, and there you see the constraints that the ring starts and ends or runs through those points. Which means later if I'm going to change actually these lines, let's test my theory, the rings will update accordingly. Okay, good. Let's make it safe. Let's go to ring axes. No, I'm actually going to ring 2. No, shoot, hold on. This overlays a little bit, so I have to hide this one for a second, and I'm going to move this one to there. And there we see everything moved with it, because first this line actually drives the construction plane, and then the way how I created in the sketch also adjusted, and here it exploded. This shouldn't have happened actually, so this is interesting. See, there actually it did. When I moved it back, then actually this constraint for the line got confused. So, which sketch point would that be? See, the problem is now they all overlap here. So maybe let's try this one. See there, it all moved with it. Let's go back to there. There. So don't really know why at one point it didn't work, because now it clearly works as expected. Okay, so that means now when we create our skin surface, and then for example we need to adjust, for example, the spline. So for example, if I go ahead and here now I adjust the spline, let's give this one a test. Most of the stuff should update, but they move around a little bit, so which makes sense, because I mean, how should the software understand where all these lines should be? But then I could go ahead by hand and actually adjust those by hand or reposition the lines. Okay, so that was a good test to show that all this dynamic stuff is really great, but of course it also has certain limitations. And here, for example, if I change this too much, like in this case, now you see one thing is down here is going to explode, but these lines are still there, so I would simply have to move them back. So it's otherwise the software has really no idea if I move this line up, all those should maybe remain where they are. So, okay, step 2, now we can go to the surfacing. Go to surface and then say this ring, this ring, this ring, this ring, this ring, this ring, and this ring. Okay, now that's a nice loft, but I'm not really hitting my rail. So what you see here right now, you have profile 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's kind of like an alias generation curves for the rail. Now the loft command, again, in Fusion is basically the skin and the rail command, or the sweep command together. So what I can do now is I can click on this rail line. So you see I have my my first sketch on again. You click, then you get a complaint, no problem. We go to swap, because this is not a generation curve, this is a rail curve. So we have to say convert that selection to a rail. There. And then this looks actually really interesting. So we click this curve and it complains again because it's not logical, and there we are. Click OK. Now this looks actually really nice. Maybe let's patch the end, curvature, and patch the other end also with curvature. And those ends look totally terrible. They really look, yeah, forced onto. And let's take a look at the rest. There are some problems. So we go to the top view, and what you see here is actually a limitation of the current loft tool, or the rail tool. You see how wobbly this is, but actually from the side it follows the rail quite nicely. So the rail feature actually in Fusion has a limitation currently. Yeah, how could I say that? Think about like a trumpet. You have your left and your right rail, and you have a circle, and then the circle would be run across the two rails and scaled along the distance, and of course and also the other distance. And that, for example, currently in Fusion doesn't really work, which is why this stuff looks so uncontrolled. Also, just as a heads up, for example, how we work with a half shell in Alias and then create like tangencies or implied tangencies, that doesn't work in Fusion as well, because the loft rail command doesn't support that. So what we actually need to do in this case is simply we have to create stabilizing rails. that's not really very complicated. So all this, let's delete. Let's go one step back. Let's show all those curves. Good. And then actually I'm going to create another sketch on this plane. And one thing I would like to show first is actually go to Preferences in case you didn't do it yet, and go to General Design and turn on Allow 3D Sketching. That's important. Then actually we go to Include Geometry and include, for example, those rings. And actually I'm not doing that because I want to try something different. The problem here is when I include the rings, I can snap wherever on the ring, but Fusion currently doesn't offer a feature like Alias has where I can snap to a curve and subdivide the curve, for example, 4 points. So I have like 1, 2, 3, 4 subdivisions. Fusion doesn't do that. So what I unfortunately have to do in that case is this. I have to create myself some simple helper lines. So let's go to ring 1, edit sketch, go to line, and then from here go out, and this be a normal line, and actually, whoops, do the same to there. So they're parallel. Okay. Now the main reason is later when I go to my secondary rail sketch, instead of just simply snapping to the ring, I can snap to this point. And this point is perfectly at the midpoint of my arc. So let's go to ring 2 and let's do the same there. And actually I try to see if I can simply drag, snap. Yep, worked just one line. So I hope you saw what I did. I'm going to redo this in the next sketch. So let's go to sketch 3. Let's rotate the view a little bit. Okay, so line. I go to this point and you see now it understood that's the center. Then I move my mouse slightly to the left and you see it drags out horizontal parallel constraint. And I can click and zip, go over to the right side through the midpoint. And those are the interactive guides. And you see the X, that means it intersects on the curve or it sits on the curve, click, perfect. There's my new line. So in the first step, actually, I created the line twice. Of course, this way I can do it simply once. So let's do this one more time. Find first the midpoint. Here I'm using the circle center as a helper for that. Click, right click, construction done. For 5, edit there. Zip, zip. Right click. One more time on. Whoa, what happened? Stop, 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 stop. Oh. Sketch disappeared. That scared me a little bit. See here, for example, again, this is another sketch and I can really snap to it. So, for example, for 3D sketching, then you need to include the geometry if you want to. There. And now let's go to the last sketch. Okay, there, done. Perfect. Okay, so stop sketch, and then here, for example, this one I call rail front. Let's go into edit sketch, and now I go to include geometry, and you see I can just comfortably simply pick those lines. That makes so much more sense. Stop sketch, and I'm going to go back to here for a second, because this thing I want to change just to align, to simplify it. Okay, rail, edit sketch, and I think this point I might have to delete, and just be sure. Okay, perfect. So now I can go ahead, spline, and snap, 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 snap. Click the green button, done. Let's go to the view. Okay, stop sketching. Actually, this one I rename into rail sides, because this is my rail center, because I'm doing a 3D sketch, so I'm not restricted to the horizontal, or not the horizontal, the 2D plane of a sketch plane anymore. I'm sketching 3D, so I'm simply adding the other rail inside the sketch as well. There. Zip, zip, and green button, check mark, stop sketch. Okay. Let's turn all those off. Let's go back to here and see if everything is still working. Okay, it is. Right mouse button, edit. And for example, we go into top view. There you can see how the surface should look like and what Fusion currently only can do. So not a big deal. Now we have those rails. Convert to rail. Click this one, convert to rail, and Fusion decides not to do it. Okay. And let's restart. Okay, this one to this one to this one. And then I say this one is a rail, this one a rail, this one a rail, and this one a rail. See, that for example worked. And then I can continue. And the main reason why I did that with the first 2-3 rings was simply to see if my rails are going to work. The rails work, so I can then continue selecting the rest. Okay, let's take a look at this. So that, for example, is a butter smooth surface. Perfect. Okay, so that actually was part one of just rebuilding that design in Fusion. And now maybe in the next step, then we can try to take a look at how we can now make modifications and then actually start maybe styling this a little bit. And for example, currently those tips are pretty bad, so I have to finish those as well. So let's take a look at if maybe we can change the rotation of those cross sections here by simply adjusting those rails. So that's going to be interesting. So maybe this one I would like to bring down to there. Let's see. Close. Might need some extra adjustment by hand. And let's see what happens if we do this. And bang, stuff doesn't work. Okay. Not a big deal. Let's delete this one for the moment. Let's turn on all the rest here. Zip, zip, zip. And I'm actually going to undo everything I did. because I would actually like to see what really happens to my rings when I start adjusting that center rail. So here, this is ring 1. Okay, I can hide it because I... Wait. Why is this one still visible? Oh, that's ring 7. It's not 1. Okay, so here, in this line, I move to there, and now I'm trying to pay attention to where all these other curves actually go to. Not too much actually changed. So I have to adjust a little bit my sketch here. Maybe a little bit like this. I have to see. I have to simplify this a little bit there. Okay. And for example, here, this one I bring to there. Let's push this back a little bit. So I have kind of like this line. Because you think about when we draw a perpendicular line as a ring through here, we run it down, this should be perpendicular to those cross sections. Kind of like the same here. That's somewhat what I was looking for. Okay, good. And then let's take a look at if any of our cross sections started to act crazy. And they're all pretty much there. Besides that one. Oh, and that one. So here's now an interesting thing. So let's go to edit. Now I can click this midpoint and push it back. Ring axis there. Let's see if I can snap to it. No, I cannot. So hold on. Let me hide all the stuff I don't need. Where's this line actually coming from? There's a ring axis. Okay. There's this. Okay, so I would like to 3D include. Yeah, I did. So this doesn't snap. So let's actually go to move point, this one to there. Let's do it that way. So you see, actually, I simply recentered my ring. Now, rings are kind of perfect in Fusion, so they always will have a perfect geometry, and so always the center point there. And that's not really the pivot point like in Alias. Pivot points here don't really exist, to be honest. It's just a geometrical center of the ring. So here with ring 1, we go to edit, and then I go to move and say this point to point, there to there. And it doesn't do it. Okay, that's kind of annoying. Interestingly, this one has some, can't really move it. Which doesn't really make any sense. So let's do it one more time. Otherwise, it's going to be time for a delete. Yeah, so, let's delete all those. Let's see if that actually works. Move this one from there, there. Yeah, no. Okay, good. So I don't really understand why Fusion Fusion decides to act this cranky. So I simply deleted it. But this is actually okay, because at this point now, maybe I would like to add some, ellipses. So I have a little bit more control over, for example, the shell. So here, for example, we make maybe this opening. And while I'm at it, let's create this midline for our rail. So yes, unfortunately, some of the work we did before is actually going to be redundant. So you see some of the rails crashed. So let's delete those for the moment. The loft also is going to flip out now, so we also delete that one. Okay. So let's go back, turn on her original thing, and there we actually see that looks like this part also is more elliptical, at least in the model. No, this is round. Or is the more elliptical part here? Oh, that's there where it is. Okay. So no, I don't have the full model in my hand, so I have to guess a little bit. But assuming this is going to be elliptical, then what I did here actually I should have done there. So sorry for the hiccup. So let me go back actually and do this. See, I can actually change the ellipse. Simply drag it, and the ellipse actually I can change back into a ring. Of course, no, this is not maybe a perfect ring, but can get circular. Okay, so also keep in mind currently all the stuff is pretty new, so it will take you a little bit of time to get familiar with the process, and the more you do it actually, the more at one point you will be able to start realizing when maybe which task will be employed the best way. And that simply takes practice. Like with drawing, the more you draw, the better you get. And then let's make our midline. Let's do this again. There and there. Okay. Construction, and then stop. Keep this one there. Okay, I want to actually go back to that sketch and say constraint you yeah, okay, I think so. It should be remain there centered. Okay, let's turn this one back on. Maybe let's go into top view, and then I can take a look maybe how much I might have to bevel this one out. Yeah, I think we're getting close. This actually is not correct, so here we have to do the same. Let's go to ring 5, edit, and delete all those there. And then back, ellipse, center point. And let's take a look. Yeah, close. And be careful, you see, like I'm using ellipse and totally distorting it. So before I do this, that's why I'm creating this line that actually helps me to find some of the midpoint a little bit. you know, this one, construction, click. Okay. What's up with the last one here? That one we have to touch up as well. So I think that was 7. Yep. Edit there and ellipse. Oops, wrong start. And here, let's pull this out only a little bit. And right, mouse button. Okay, stop sketch. Good. So let's check the rest. All looks more or less okay. Actually, I'm not sure if maybe this one has to be. Maybe we should turn this one into an ellipse as well. And this one is ring 2. So edit sketch, delete, delete, and ellipse there, push it out, put in our helper midline. Let's go to this view. Let's push the midpoint back. There. Okay. Good. This one actually I keep rounded. Looks to me that my center ring here is a little bit too tiny, but this would be just an adjustment you can do afterwards. For the sake of time usage, I'm going to leave it at this. Okay, so at this point, we basically have recreated our cross sections. I can create another sketch again on this plane. 3D include those points, so I can recreate my center rail sketch. Oh, there's a problem. That one I have to fix. Something went totally bananas. Okay. You edit sketch. Okay, so as I said very often, the time it takes you to repair something, as long as it's not obvious, it's going to take you more time than fixing it. Than rebuilding it. So instead of trying to figure out what went wrong, I simply did it this way. Okay, so this one can go in a tiny bit. Then my midpoint decides to move and zip there. Okay, good. No, this is fantastic. I have to go back to the sketch because I have to include those 2 points, and then I'm ready to do my spline stuff. Zip, 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 and there. Okay. And then all the same on the other side. There. Okay. Finish. Rail sides. And then we can go to loft and say you, and try this rail, this rail. I think actually you have to be careful with the order of rails you use. So you see, I'm just skip run rail. Let's see. No, didn't really matter. Okay. Then I don't know why the first time I added the side rails, it didn't really work. Okay. And oh yeah. Perfect. Let's hide all the sketches. I don't need them anymore. Now this is actually somewhat better. Let's see if we patch this one, how it might look. So there, a similar problem will remain with the ending. And actually, here either we can patch it, or for example, we can trim it. Let's assume actually that's where the blade goes in. So in this case, I'm simply only patching it with connected. Then after all this is done, I can select everything and say stitch. There. And let's take a look there. Now to make this one, for example, less problematic, I basically have to create my side rail so that the rail doesn't stop there, but it looks like the surface will flow this way. So I will go back to that actually just at the end of a video. I just want to, for the moment, continue here. So basically all this, for example, now I can consider my prep work. So I'm going to create a group. So it's all nicely finished. And for example, here we have a body. Now, you see this is actually solid. So it's a shell. Now we can go ahead, like I showed before, we create a sketch, draw a line, cut it, shell it, and just continue working exactly the same way how I'm finishing my own blade. Okay, so that was basically everything for this part, how we can adjust the design and rebuild everything in Fusion, set up sketch planes and profiles, so we can create actually quite comfortably a really nice looking flow inside the surface. I hope you saw actually that it has a lot of power to it, but also requires a lot of work when, for example, you work in something like a solid modeler, like Fusion, and pretty much SolidWorks to Inventor, it's the same. Wherever you have those sketch planes, the advantage is the interactivity. The disadvantage is the labor you have to put in to get this to work. So I hope also that this was maybe a good explanation about or demonstration between advantage of Alias, fast modeling, and then precision modeling in Fusion, and why, for example, you really need to know what you want to do before, for example, you can create something. So start an Alias, explore ideas quickly, maybe with dirty models, and then actually finish the design here. Because if you start from scratch here with something like this, the amount of time it will require you to fine tune and find the shape will be longer than actually when you just do the explorative modeling in Alias.